So we're in for an interesting discussion this morning. I'm going to start, Michael, by asking you. The conversation is around autonomous negotiation. So what is an autonomous negotiation?
What is it? Yes, it's a bot that negotiates on our behalf. So it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to build the parameters of what will make a successful negotiation. We send a link out to our suppliers, and they click on the link. Takes average of 11 minutes to get a successful negotiation. And they're successful about 70+% of the time.
What does success look like then, from an autonomous negotiation perspective?
It ends in, it's how we define success. So when we build the parameters, we put in the minimum requirement to... In
terms of outcomes of negotiation.
Yeah, as far as an outcome goes. And so we kind of define what success means up front.
All right, well, without giving away the secret sauce, how does a negotiating bot work, Kaspar?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like 5 years ago when we started, then no one believed that people are ready to engage with bots, AI agents. But it turns out they actually quite like it. So in the existing procurement process, you have sourcing events, you have requisitions. This triggers the email that Michael mentioned to the supplier. They'll click on the email link and they have a chatbot interface. And then the chat is having discussion. How are you today? What do you like? What you don't like? Some incentives. Tries to get you a better deal as a supplier. And then in return asks something that Walmart, for example, prefers. And in 80% of time then reaches a deal, concludes, sometimes signs it. And automatically updates your system so that end-to-end from our client side, there are no humans involved throughout the process. And while we speak here, then bots are out there and helping buyers doing their job with the long and mid-tail suppliers.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because you mentioned that it asks how suppliers are doing. And we learn a lot from how those questions are being answered, right? And we roll that back into negotiation. So for example, the how are you doing sounds pretty innocent, but we've seen a correlation to higher success rates when they answer that they're doing good rather than okay. And then we can also take different tracks when they answer good versus okay. We may be able to take a more aggressive track to get a better deal, right?
So if they say okay, you can tell them, okay, come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we'll try and negotiate
well,
again tomorrow.
Well, we kind of take a slower roll to get to, the end result.
Kaspar, you said about the fact that there's not really any human involvement in the negotiation itself, but what kind of inputs do you need to actually share with the bot so that the bot is able to execute on the negotiation?
Yeah, during the setup, you set up the parameters like thresholds and limits and terms that we negotiate and value of those. And then you have, and of course, the bot is doing also up to $5 million deals, and there already human is involved per negotiation as well, like setting the negotiation parameters, incentives, and so it depends on the value of a deal, human involvement becomes necessary.
Now, Paula, you're starting on your journey of using autonomous negotiation. So as you are kind of making that decision, what kind of considerations do you take into account of whether to use a bot to negotiate for you or not?
So for me, it's, first of all, when I hear these bots, I think of The Matrix, the movie. I'm trying to make it fun for my team. So I think the considerations for BMAs were more around, I see this as an enabler to leapfrog the teams into what the future entails. So I know what's going to be in the long run, which is where Michael and Walmart are. But for us and for me as a leader, it was how do I make my team comfortable with this concept that in the future, you will have someone in the matrix, a sentinel, an agent that's going to be doing it for you, and how to almost not see this as they're competing with me, but I need to get on this wagon because otherwise, someone will, and they're the ones who are going to take the job. So for me, it's been all around the change management. And I'm saying the matrix team because I think we have to make it look cool and have people want to do it. Because I think for us, something like this, which is clearly is here, right? We shouldn't say this is the future, this is the present. It's the only way to 10x all the small negotiations. It's how you bring the human part along. Because you heard from Michael, you have to give the parameters. And that's the other learning, right? Like, this is not something you woke up one day, put the switch on, and it's going to work. You have to train people. How many weeks do you spend on did you say 12 weeks? I forgot.
4 to 6 weeks.
4 to 6 weeks. Yeah. So you see that you have the humans in this 4 to 6 weeks process. And so we also have to educate people around that. This is not a switch on. Yep. This is a work. You have the human work, then you have the sentinels, the agents that are going to come and expedite. But I also think, to close on the human perspective, we have people, not everybody in procurement likes this back and forth with the suppliers. It takes time. And sometimes you are spending the same time with 5 million than with 500 million. Yeah. And so you want your teams to also understand, I mean, I'm helping you here. You know, it's like the vacuum cleaner, the robot, the Roomba. I'm helping you here on the, so that you can do the big stuff. So for me, they've been great around this change management and changing the way we think.
And see how different the role of your buyers will be then, right? Yeah. It's not like executing every deal yourself. It's more like managing these thousands of bots out there, setting parameters, giving directions, and becoming the manager all of a sudden of your colleagues. And those colleagues, maybe as in Matrix, don't have a real body, but they in some sense like communicate to you, and they are part of your team.
Yes.
Now, Michael, you've been using autonomous negotiations for quite a while. I wonder if you could just talk through the journey that you went on at Walmart in terms of making the decision to try autonomous negotiations and an AI agent to be able to do that, and then kind of embedding that then in your standard operating model.
Yeah, so it's been, I guess it was around 4 years ago now, so it's been a while, but I mean, it seemed like a really good idea. We do a lot of negotiations and a lot of low value negotiations, so we wanted to give it a try. Our biggest concern from the leadership was what do our suppliers think about it, because we were worried that, big bad Walmart's gonna send out a bot to negotiate. We don't care about our suppliers, or we care about them even less than we care about them now. So that was our biggest concern. So we did a small pilot, and it was a simple one. It was in Canada, and it was for payment terms on goods not for resale or indirect spend. And we found a very willing participant from the business who was excited and interested to do it, got support from the procurement team, the legal team. We launched it, and it was highly successful. And we learned also that, interestingly, more than almost 85% of the suppliers that participated said they'd actually rather negotiate with a bot than a human at Walmart. So.
Anything to avoid procurement.
Yeah, that's right. So that alleviated our biggest concern. So that really cleared the path to push into other areas. We went to other countries. We did other areas of spend. We did services for stores. We did logistics. We did several different category areas, countries, and now most recently, I guess the one area that was even more concerned to begin with was our GFR, goods for resale, for similar reasons. And they actually, after all the success that we've had over the years, then they engaged with it as well, and they're actually doing a very big deployment, again on payment terms, but I think that'll
made them comfortable.
Move into other areas as well. So that was the last big area that we hadn't broken into yet. So it's been a continuous evolution, and it's been successful in every country and every category that we've done it in.
How did you determine which areas of spend and which types of negotiation to focus on when you were kind of starting to build it up and embed it into the organization?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's still probably the hardest thing that we do is where do we do it? And the one thing is too that it's each new area or campaign, as we call it, it takes 4 to 6 weeks. You set it up, you pick the suppliers, you set the parameters. So we do have to continuously sell it to the organization, which becomes less difficult the more success that you have, which we've had, but it still is a matter of priorities, right? Everybody's busy, seems like a great idea, but we do have to continue to make sure that people, remember that we have it as a tool, that it has been very successful. And so then, we just continue to talk to CFOs. That's probably our biggest customer, is we work with the CFOs and say, hey, where would this make sense to you? That, along with the procurement teams, that's how we, identify areas, really, is primarily working with the CFOs and the local procurement teams.
Paula, how are you thinking about kind of where to focus, where to get the early wins from, kind of what circumstances need to exist where you think are the best use cases as you start to embed the AI agent in your team?
I mean, learning from the experts here around payment terms.
Yeah.
So we have a huge cash initiative. We just bought 3 companies like 6-8 months ago, and now we have to pay for them. And so we have a huge cash initiative, and then we are culturally, and I go back to the culture, we're culturally what is called the BMS nice. So people will put forward being nice over, getting better payment terms. So we saw this as this is going to lead progress into like the payment terms that we need. But it will get also people okay with the fact that you're doing this, and we're doing first the tail spend. So there is a whole implementation. We're going with the payment terms, but then the idea is to have a roadmap, whereas, we show success with this pilot that, I have a CFO who's, he cannot wait to go and tell investors that we have bots doing negotiations for us. So I think the sexiness of this is changing. I think it's making CFOs, which are our biggest partners on this journey, and to want us to do this, because actually it makes for a very good conversation, that you have such an operational efficiency, that you're looking at how you're paying suppliers, that you're doing it autonomous. So we look at payment terms. It's almost like a safe bet. And you do it with what we call the no regrets, right? You do the whole matrix, the ones that you're not spending a lot, and the ones that are not going to make a lot of noise. And because we are a pharma, then we look at the risk tolerance, and then we say, okay, if it doesn't touch a patient, if it doesn't touch an HCP, which is the doctor, if it's not over the threshold for the risk tolerance, then it's almost like a no regret move. Yeah. And so that's how we did the mapping of when, how we're going to do the pilot.
Yeah, it's interesting. Kaspar, both Michael and Paula talked about payment terms, and when I first thought about autonomous negotiations, you just think price. So it's interesting that it's not just price isn't the only thing that you negotiate. So where do you see, across your entire user base, what kind of negotiations are folks using? What's kind of the range of things that people are doing using the AI agents?
Yeah, we have seen that the AI agents, we can split them to 4 different levels of intelligence. Level number 1, what we call the most standard level, is starting with payment terms. And as you said, it's safe bet quite often in indirect level. And this is mostly about one term, kind of. Some people make a positive joke about that. It's like a hagglebot. But level 2 is already when real negotiations kick off about other terms, allowances, and we ask the preferences of suppliers, and there are trade-offs, and we make good deals there. Level 3 is advanced level of AI intelligence, and there it goes already to quite often direct and pricing negotiations. For example, in manufacturing, we have price lists. You need to update them every year, right? And you don't have time, again, with long mid-tail suppliers. And there you have loads of data points, like commodities, margins, like volume declines and everything. And they all are important on an item level, and you can have thousands of items. So for human mind to go through this process of whether this item cost should be this or this, very difficult. But it's easy math, right? So level 3 is on that, and what we see is now emerging what we call level 4 superhuman AI, where already AI is going to help buyers in strategic decision makings as well. And this is super interesting. Like, let's say in Walmart's case, you can see that Tex-Mex is kind of becoming more popular as a category, and then let's lower the margins of our suppliers. Let's reach out 10 more suppliers there, and next week on a shelf you have Tex-Mex suppliers. compared to today's world where let's have a category review in 10 months and let's form a decision then, and then you're too late already. So it makes large enterprises very agile when it comes to pricing negotiations. But you need to reach there. It's difficult to start with pricing negotiations with direct, very important.
What do you see some of the commonalities among all your clients in terms of some of the success factors when they have implemented the AI agents?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think one commonality on high level is that belief and understanding that AI agents are here and they are going to change tomorrow's procurement entirely compared to today. And because we are lucky that 95% of our sales is still inbound. Companies reaching us, CPOs reaching us, understanding that, hey, we need to get moving. So I think this is the main commonality, that belief and understanding where the future is. And second is the pain. It's very clear when 4 years ago we called Walmart. We didn't have any customers. Walmart was our first customer. And we called Walmart and we had a meeting with C-level people. And it was very clear that so many suppliers are not managed or managed very poorly. And it's bad for both sides of the business. And so the pain has always been there. And so far, without bots, it has been difficult to address it.
Paula, how do you think about overcoming the fear of your team that this bot is coming and it's going to replace some of your job that you're going to do, and that's a net positive for them? It's not that they have to worry about their role, because I think a lot of times for procurement folks, we look at our self-worth in our ability to negotiate and the results we get from negotiation. So there's kind of psychologically, I think, a big thing around, being a negotiator is what a procurement person is, and now AI is going to be able to do that for us.
So I think there are many components of that. So and things that we use. Some of them were something that we thought about putting forward, and some were just good luck on the process that happened. So we were going through a process of insourcing. Some of the tactical activities were being done by a third party, and I had to insource those activities. So I committed to insource the activities with 50% of the people that the third party had, because I wanted to self-fund my ability to do this. So that in itself didn't present a threat.
Yeah, that was your, the business case that you gave yourself, and it's not replacing folks on the team because it was an outsourced relationship.
So that was the first one, and it was almost like, oh wow, perfect. She's going to, as a leader, and for the company, and this is where the C-suite. So you have to do all the levels. So this is how I got the C-suite to be like, oh great idea. You insource. I'm not going to give you, I'm not going to promise you savings, but I'm promising you self-funding the technology so that in the future I can have a different operating model. So that was for the C-suite. And then for the team, again, it's immediately not them, but then we also, and we had an advisor, Alan is, I don't know if he's here, Alan, yes, who was helping us do this, and the way we did it, which I think it was brilliant, is we brought teams along into the discovery. And during this discovery, by having them be part of it, that meant that they felt they had a decision point, right? And we went from looking at 24, then to 14, then to 10, to finally selecting 4, Pactum being one of them. And then in that selection, they were doing a pitch to me as the CPO. So now you are reversing it. I'm not the one telling them. They're telling me, I want this because I did a pilot, I looked at it, and I think it's going to work. So that, bringing people along that. But then we were talking earlier, okay, now we brought 50 people into the pilots, and then I have a team of 400, so how do I bring the other 350? So I think that's going to be probably the next change management we have to do. Yeah. But I think, going back to what we discussed before, is if we go through the payment terms, then we show how it works, then you make it cool, the matrix, then it's almost like, and then if you give this as a tool, because remember, procurement, we're always selling our services, which is so annoying. If you're in finance, they need you to close the books. If you're in procurement, it's almost like you have to constantly be selling the fact that you are needed. But if you come to a meeting, and then you have a demo, and then you show your business stakeholders that you're doing this, autonomous. I mean, it's almost like you become the cool procurement. And I think this is a huge selling point for us. How do we go from being the underdogs continuously to being the cool place to be? And I think it's with this embracement of technology. So that's wrapping it into
kind of have the approach to the different levels of change management that you have to bring people along. Now, Michael, how did you, or was this even an issue, like trust the bot? I'm sure, you know, as you're going from human negotiations to AI negotiations, there may have been, we've got to see it in action to trust it, to know that we can then scale it. Did you kind of have to go through that process?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's different, it's new, and there was distrust of the bots, I guess. So, I mean, we did have to go through that, but Paula did mention also the, you know, the self-funded. Basically, this is self-funded. I mean, the ROI is very high.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of argument against it, at least to try it, right? So, you know, that made it easier as well. Is we're not really paying a lot up front for this, and we only, you know, we're getting a very high ROI.
Wait. Don't say we're not paying a lot. You don't want him to charge more.
My team is already writing notes. Like,
this is first
We're
mover
paying
advantage.
the fair price.
Early adopter
It's
gets
a
the
very
best
good
deal.
ROI. I'll just say that.
next year you can't hear that. Like, it's barely there. The ROI is barely there.
But also, sorry, I just want to mention too about the excitement factor. We've seen that as well, right? Where it started as very tentative, and you know, people didn't want to be the one that the suppliers were going to be angry and it was their fault. And so we saw a lot of that up front. But now, I mean, 4 years later, actually, our CEO talked about it in our latest global leadership meeting, and our president, you know, took advantage of that and you know, took credit for it, which is fine because that's what we do in procurement. Is we you know, want others to take credit for what we do. But I mean, it's exciting now, right? It's so that has really changed and evolved as well.
And Paula, your work with like C-level and team level, it's amazing. Like, and this is what the most successful clients of Pactum do. Like, startups alone can't succeed with this. Like, it needs tight collaboration with all of your people to kind of do this journey together. So there could be some startups you try, and like if they don't succeed, then you know, shut it down. But enabling AI agents to your workforce needs collaboration. It needs just speaking openly what it is, why we shouldn't be afraid of them, why they are like colleagues of us, and this is amazing.
Well, I know it's close to wrapping up. Michael, I got one last question for you. As the early adopter, you know, you've talked about the journey that you're going on and bringing in more areas of spend and bringing in more countries, bringing in more stakeholders. But from a capability perspective, what's the North Star or the vision on what you can actually achieve once you've kind of scaled what you're doing today? What's the next iteration or the next generation?
Yeah, I don't think we know. We do discuss that a lot. I don't think we still know. We just don't see many limits for it, to be honest. I mean, it seems like everything we've used it on, it's been successful. So it's really just continuing that evolution and journey and continuing to find new areas. You know, if we ever run into something and it's not successful, we may pause and try to figure out, you know, what to do differently. But at this point, it feels like the sky's the limit. So, of course, we're not going to get into, you know, GFR brand, you know, very strategic suppliers, but we have so much opportunity outside of that. So it seems limitless at this point.
Yeah, and talking about the ROI, I'm sure that you are using it in a lot of negotiations that would otherwise have been left unnegotiated.
That's true. And I think that's also why, one reason why the suppliers like it is because otherwise we don't really pay much attention to them, if any, you know, at all. So they're getting a chance at least to connect with Walmart and to potentially grow with us as well, which we do give them opportunities to grow in these negotiations also.
Well, this is a very exciting technology. I want to thank you, Paula, thank you, Michael, thank you, Kaspar, for joining me on stage today, and thank you, everybody, for joining us.